Always start your diagnosis with a thorough customer interview to determine the nature of the concern. Then do a visual inspection of the mounts and shafts and steering linkage, and of the vehicle in general to make sure it is in safe operating condition. Where possible, road test the vehicle to verify the concern and take notes on the conditions under which the concern occurs. In general, steering column concerns will fall into the following categories: ignition lock problems, ignition switch problems, tilt wheel problems, noises in the steering column, looseness in the steering column, hard steering effort or binding, transmission shift lever problems, electrical switch problems. The ignition switch lock cylinder turns an actuator rod that acts on the sector shaft to engage a rack that locks the steering wheel when the ignition cylinder is put in the lock position. Many technicians confuse the ignition lock cylinder with the ignition switch. The ignition switch is separate and is typically located alongside the steering column under the shroud. Complaints of an ignition cylinder that will not lock or is difficult to engage the lock position are usually related to bent actuator rods or defective ignition switches or lock cylinders. The ignition switch, lock cylinder, and components should be removed from the housing and disassembled to replace bent, damaged, or seized components. On automatic transmission vehicles, the transmission gearshift selector must be in park for the ignition lock to be engaged. Always check the alignment of the gearshift linkage and levers for damage or wear when troubleshooting a problem of a steering lock that will not engage. Noises in the steering column can vary from vibrations at idle to clunks during turning. Vibrations and movement in the column are usually related to the way the column mounts to the instrument panel. If the mounting bolts are loose, the vibrations from the powertrain will be transmitted up through the steering column. Loose mounts will also cause the column to shift as the steering wheel is turned and cause any of several noises, including clunking and scraping noises. Steering column mounting bolts should be checked for tightness using a torque wrench and setting the bolts to the manufacturer's specified torque. Noises from the column while the steering wheel is being turned can result from worn U-joints or loose couplings between the main shaft and the intermediate shaft, or from a column that is misaligned. Worn or seized bearings or bushings in the shaft tubes, or a lack of lubrication on the bearings will also cause noises during turns.